I think we're live. Yes, we're live now. Bryce Wade, thanks for joining me. This is another treat. You've been helping the channel a bunch for a good chunk of time now, and I've been recommending you guys for that same amount of time because people need to save their money. People need to save, and I mean when I say save your money, I mean save it from Carney, save it from the government, what they're going to do with your money. And it doesn't matter. Like, your money's not safe. Even if it's in a safe, they can dilute your money. They could take the value of it away from you. And that's really what's being lost here, is the value of currency, the value of your dollars, the value of everything. And a lot of people have been running to commodities, assets, going to the stock market, buying real estate, all this stuff. But a lot of those things aren't safe havens, especially real estate anymore. So we're going to get into all of this stuff. But first and foremost, how have you been, man?
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure. Like I said last time, I've been a big fan of yours a long time, since Convoy. And man, things have been good, man. There's been a lot of stuff happening right now. We've just inked a couple really big deals with some really big people in the industry. So that's been going really well. And now we're trying to bring the good word of protecting yourself from the craziness of the world to as many people as possible. And I really appreciate your opportunity and your platform to help do that.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and of course. So tell people about first off yourself and how you got involved with New World Precious Metals, and then let's get into like the economy, all of the stuff, because I've been talking a lot about this stuff. There's enough to be concerned about what's going on with that, and then obviously like why people would want to get into precious metals. And then different levels of getting into that. We can get into all that, but first off, how did you get into all this stuff? Why did you get involved?
So I'm kind of an anomaly. I really grew up when I was about 8 years old. I really recognized from a very, very young age that there's major problems with the world, and I didn't know why they were happening, and I didn't know how they were happening at that young age. Obviously, it took me basically into my 20s that I was really like, things are really messed up, and there's major systemic problems that we're facing. And so I've been basically into politics and economics and macroeconomics and geopolitics and all this different stuff for most of my adult life, if not all of it. And the kind of the purpose for that is, if I have a goal that I want to achieve, how am I going to do that if the world around me has a set goal to destroy me and my life and my family in a myriad of different ways, right? So like we're the toxics in our food and in the world around us. You got economic problems, we got geopolitical, there's racial tensions all over the world now. Like all of these things have a reason, like a reason and a purpose for them being there, right? And I looked at how am I able to protect myself, and ultimately, if I want to survive all of this craziness, because when I was younger, I looked at World War II, because I was a bit of a history buff too, and said it felt so good that we don't have to do World War III, and here we are having World War III, right? So irony on us, right? But that aside, if you really want to thrive in a crazy world, you really have to understand what's happening and why, so you can position yourself and prepare yourself to profit from whatever that situation is. So I look at things in a very realistic, what is the reality and what do I need to do about that? So I look at, how do I understand what is happening? How did we get here? Ultimately, where do I want to go? And how do I get there, right? So that's kind of the process, right? Where were we? Where are we now? Where do I want to go? How do I get there, right? And so I really landed on gold and silver because I was doing business consulting. Like I come from a marketing background, so I had a mentor that trained me in business and sales and stuff. Did some business consulting for a little while, and then really got into gold and silver because I got the opportunity, because I was trying to sell New World Precious Metals, a bit of marketing and consulting and stuff. And then I talked to Warren, my partner now. And I was like, hey man, pitch me, what do you got? And because I know a whole bunch about how the economic system and the financial system works, he was like, oh wow, you're really good at this, you you should do this with us. And I was like, yeah, well, let's make some real money. And kind of what came out of that is the affiliate program that we built to work with creators and different people like yourself to get the good word of gold and silver that has been a safe haven for people for protecting their wealth throughout thousands and thousands of years, and help people accomplish that goal of protecting their family and their wealth. So that's how I kind of came to be now. And then I started reaching out to people that you know. I look for people that care about their audience and care about their families, right? That's kind of the two big things for me, because there's lots of type of people that will just think, I'll take anything, right? I don't want the people that are just going to take anything for any reason. There has to be a purpose, right? Because you can trust people's purpose, right? If you have a family that you care about, I can trust that you're going to act in the best interest of that family because you want to protect your family, right? And so I look for people that that care about the country, care about the future, care about their family, and ultimately want to help protect their audience, because you have this ideological duty, I would say, to help the people around you. So. Thank you.
Well, and actually, I actually believe in this. So, like, if you're for people that have watched the channel, you don't see like Raid Shadow Legend ads every episode. I don't really have a lot of sponsors. I have you guys, and then I also have my I have my store where I sell coffee. You can buy. There's a couple of t-shirts, a couple of mugs, that kind of thing. Like we're not really pushing that on everybody. It's not really what I'm doing. I don't do this for that. It's not like trying to squeeze every little dollar out of every little video that you could possibly do. I do this because I'm passionate about like bringing people the news, bringing people stories about what's actually happening in the world, and a little bit of forewarning, like, hey, I've learned all this stuff because I'm big in economics. Like I got into economics during the Ron Paul revolution. You remember when he ran for president? And I was like, what's this guy talking about? He's got all this awesome stuff to say. And it's everything that we're thinking. It's everything that we're like, what? Why are people not saying this? And why is he being shut up? Why is it that the media really works so hard to shut that guy up? And I'm like, well, I got to read what he's recommending, right? So he wrote the book, End the Fed. He recommended a bunch of stuff. He recommended going and reading about Austrian economics. And I just splurged on book buying. I bought so many books and I just engorged myself with all this knowledge. And I learned about the Mises Institute and about Dr. Walter Block, who I eventually had on the show. It was amazing. And it really, what it comes down to is like, holy cow, I need to get this information out to more people, because people need to understand how this all goes down. How does this all work? Why are we in the pickle that we're in? And how can we get ourselves out of it? Or at least prepare yourself so when the blow comes, it's not going to be so hard on you, or you don't get wiped out entirely. And that's why when you came to me, I was like, okay, well, I can get on board with that. I get 100 emails a day of like,
sell my shit.
Advertise our cereal. Like, what does cereal have to do with what I can't sell cereal? It's not a thing. So
somebody with integrity, eh?
Well, it's next week, Raid Shadow Legends. I know. So I don't know. I feel weird about it. I feel gross about, throwing ads at people. So when you guys came to me, and when you in particular came to me, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm on board with this. And especially when you told me what the product actually was, because I'm like, I've heard about like gold stocks and like paper stuff, and you're buying, this and that. You don't really actually own any physical assets. And it's very different. It's very different what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for everybody that doesn't know, we basically do three things, right? So we are a physical precious metals broker. So New World Precious Metals is a brokerage that sells physical precious metals in three ways. So we have physical, what we call retail. So if you want, hey, I've got $10,000 and I want, silver coins that I think the world's going to collapse and the bank's going to steal my money and Carney's after everything that I have left after that, then I'm going to put this in silver coins that I can use for transactions at my house, in my home, protected by me. That's what all precious metals brokers do effectively. That's universal. Basically, we work with one of the biggest in Canada, and that's one of the things that we do. That's kind of a minority of what we do, but that is one of the things that we do. The opposite end of that spectrum, because I always put it on a spectrum of in your hand to in the system. So that was in your hand. This is in the system, which is registered account. A lot of Canadians, it's been drilled into our heads since I was a kid at the very least, and definitely the previous generation as well, that you got to get your RSPs in there, got to save for your retirement, save, protect. And how that works basically is it's effectively a tax deferred vehicle where you put money into it, you don't get taxed on it, it lowers your taxable income, so supposedly you make more money over the time, and then when you retire and you need to pull that money out, you're taking it out when you're being taxed at a lower tax bracket. Now that is the public idea. Don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form, and here's why. I've talked to a whole bunch of clients that have had 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, $300,000 in retirement savings in RSPs, and they can't get it. Because if they pull all that money out at one time, they get they get taxed on that, but B, it puts them into a higher tax bracket, and C, and most importantly, it affects how much they get from their other pensions. So it affects your pensions, right? So basically, in my mind, what that told me, especially talking to clients now so many times, is that the Canadian government and how they've structured that vehicle, they want you at a maximum amount of money that you spend on a regular basis. So you're effectively, they put this cap effectively on how much money you can take out of your own money before it affects how much money you actually get from the government. Now, I'm sure there's a reason for this beyond that. They just want to control and know how much money you have, right? But in my mind, why would you want the government to get to decide how you spend your money? Like, I'm very opposed to the central bank digital currencies for this reason, because it's effectively a complete loss of financial sovereignty and our ability to transact. Like cash, I can go anywhere and with anybody and say, give me that, here's the money, boom, done. And nobody knows about the transaction except the person that I'm talking to. The central bank digital currency is a complete opposite of that. It's a loss of transparency, it's a loss of privacy, complete transparency for the government. They get to control it, and they can decide if they don't like you, hey, didn't take your whatever we told you to do, you said some bad words online, boop, and you can't do any transactions at all, right? And then if you connect that to a social credit score or like carbon credits or whatever other nonsense they're trying to push, then it's basically a system of control, which I'm obviously very opposed to. So kind of the point in this is that,
and they're fans of what China's doing. They're not even quiet about it.
No,
they're big fans.
Yeah,
and
communists always are.
Holy cow, it's really bad. And yeah, communism. You call it what you want. Like, people on the left want to call it fascism. Sure, let's call it fascism. Sure. That's what it is. It's a perfect merger between state and corporation.
Exactly.
It is
they're
that.
using communist policies because they're basically taking away private property.
This is the one thing that I think the left and the right can get together on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you think, oh, socialism's good. Yeah, well, I'm not going to agree with you on that, because socialism, the goal of socialism is communism. But communism in the world, all of this authoritarianism, it's coming from the same place. It's coming from these elites from Davos, Switzerland, and Europe and China and all these places, and they all have the same common goal: control the hell out of people.
Yeah, we have basically the Western oligarchs, which are effectively communists. They said, hey, because one of the tenets of communism is seize the means of production. Well, they did. They bought it. They bought it all with money that was printed out of nothing, because that's what central banking really is they're printing money out of nothing effectively and charging interest on it. So it's a system that's set up to be destroyed by itself, by the mathematics of how it works eventually. And on the opposite end of that, in the East, you have just authoritarian people that are like, I took control and now I'm in charge and I've got the guns and you don't, so you do what I say, right? So you've got the Western oligarchs and the West in general, and you've got the Eastern authoritarians, and they all agree that, hey, I should be in charge. And, democracy, this democracy thing, you having rights, all that sort of stuff. No, I get to decide, right? And so obviously me being a free citizen of the West, no, thank you. So, and so when I look at this and see that these people are trying to seize the means of production, how we transact, our rights, all of these different things, I mean, to me, that's basically a declaration of war, because they're basically saying, you better do what I tell you or else, right? And that's where that leads. And so, precious metals is a way that people have always had access to this to protect themselves and their family for thousands of years. There's thousands of currencies throughout history that have all gone to zero, because eventually the government has too much debt, they can't service it, things collapse, or it hyperinflates. Like, those are the two ways that it ends.
Even before they figured out fiat currency, that they could screw people over with just pieces of paper.
Yes.
They used to do stuff with the gold. They used to do funny business with the gold. They do gold and silver, and they put like lead ingots in the middle of it, so it would weigh big enough, or they would clip the edges off and keep that for the king, so the king can make more gold. Isn't that originally where the ridges came from on coins?
Yes. Yeah, so what they used to do is, so this is back in Roman times, and one of the reasons the Roman Empire fell is because they were inflating the currency. And how they did that is they would take the coins and shave off the corners of them or the edges or whatever, and you would have like, an eighth less of the coin. So people would look at the coin and be like, "Hey, that's shaved. You got to give me two now," or whatever, right? And
Mhm.
additionally to that, so they would take the shavings from the actual silver or actual gold, and then mix it with other metals. So you could see, because the metals look differently, that we're talking like 80%, 50% silver, 30% silver, whatever. And so that's why inflation actually happens. So now, because it's not a physical currency that we're doing with that anymore, now they do it at a digital or an institutional level where we can't see it. We just know it's happening, and they tell us. But this is ultimately what inflation is that they're printing money. That old saying: "Your cash and checks, your ass can't cash," or your writing checks, your ass can't writing checks, your ass can't cash.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Well, this is kind of the idea, right? That's effectively what money printing is, right? And that's why we have this inflation. Like they're saying that, I'll give you a perfect example, right? They're saying that for years that inflation's been, it's 2 to 4%, and then we had that massive influx of inflation. Well, like 15 years ago, when I was in construction, because I used to be in construction way back in the day, I used to go to White Spot every morning and get two bacon breakfast sandwiches, right? Each one of
Mhm.
those was $3.50. So for $7, I ate pretty good, right? That was
Yeah.
good breakfast. Felt really good about that. One of those I just had yesterday was $8.75.
Shut
So
up.
so we're talking like what is that, 130% or something in 15 years?
It was
That
probably
doesn't sound.
smaller too. I've
Yeah, it
noticed
probably
that
was.
things
Yeah,
have been getting
exactly.
smaller.
Yeah, so that doesn't sound like a 2% per year, does it?
No,
It's crazy.
inflation is measured by the CPI.
Yeah.
So inflation itself is the expansion of the monetary supply.
Yes.
It's not rising prices. Rising prices is the effect that
Right.
we get from it. It's the symptom,
Yeah.
right, of the disease, which is money printing.
Yeah.
But one thing that a lot of people don't know is because they'll see, oh, the U.S. has this inflation rate, Canada has this inflation rate, that other country has that inflation rate.
Hmm.
Not one country has the same CPI. It'd be like everyone having a different like metric system versus imperial versus something else versus, I don't know, Whitworth. Like
Hmm.
they have their own criteria, and the worst is they keep changing the criteria to suit themselves. So
Yeah.
the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is supposed to be a basket of goods. It's a
Hmm.
bunch of things that you typically buy in the economy. And now what they would do is they would change what's in the basket of goods to make
Yep.
the CPI look good. So
Yeah.
the inflation numbers are down. What do we do in Canada? Let's just take out food and housing. Like what the heck? And they would obviously put in things like electronics and all these things that have a natural deflation, a
Yeah.
deflationary effect in the marketplace, like in the genuine marketplace.
Yeah.
Electronics has been one of these things that is actually, it proves against their theory, right? So that their theory and what they espouse, and this is the Keynesian economic theory. There's a bunch of theories. So there's the Keynesian school, there's the Chicago school. People know
Hmm.
Milton Friedman, and then there's the Mises school, which is the Austrian school. So
Yeah.
Mises, Hayek, Menger, all those guys. The the thought there from Mises or from Keynes was that we need to have a little bit of inflation, or else people will stop buying stuff. People will hoard. So we need to add a little bit of inflation all the time. It's
The
an
irony is that
excuse.
everybody does hoard at the top.
Well, they're hoarding anyway, but it's, yeah. So that's the thing. But in the marketplace,
Hmm.
the electronics is the proof. The proves that theory is incorrect, because electronics, it doesn't matter. Next year you'll have a better and cheaper one, but people still buy now. Nobody's waiting and sitting there. No, I can't get the electronics because next month there's going to be another better one.
Well,
People buy it all the time.
yeah, and in addition to that, though, that's one of the things that has actually gone down in price, because the way that's been manufactured has been exported to Asia, where it's cheaper. So the price of electronics has actually gone down significantly. So if they include on in CPI, oh look, things are not as bad because we're including this. But you're talking about rent, food, and food and fuel. they don't include those. Those are the things that like basically dictate how much your life costs, right? And if you look at all of the
Baseline
things,
stuff.
exactly, right? And so I read this somewhere on Twitter, because Twitter's great. And like if you have a pie chart of everything that you spend on a monthly basis, right? And 80% of that, your disposable, your total income goes to the bare necessities to stay alive. Well, you're basically a slave to just staying alive, right? And this is what
Mhm.
destroys societies, right? Because you think of all the stuff that you don't need for survival, right? Like marketing, all of these other things. Like, hey, I got a vacuum cleaner, and I've got all of these other things that are not necessary for survival. If all of your income is basically taken up just for survival, how do you have an economy beyond those basics, right? Because you have to have, because it's important for everybody to understand how our economy works, right? Our economy works on a very simple scarcity based model, which is basically because you only have so much, you have to decide where you put that money, and you have to do a transaction to get what you want, and you have to give up some of your currency that you made from working. So you produce something, somebody else produces something, and all of these transactions are flowing in a circle so that there's what's called the velocity of money, right? So when the velocity of money slows down, which is what's happening in China right now, because everybody's like, hey, I don't have a job, everything's falling out of the sky, so I'm just going to hold on to my money and save. Well, if you're not actually making transaction, all businesses fail, because I'm not bringing in money. How can I afford to open a shop and pay
Mhm.
somebody to do whatever? That's what crushes economies. So you have to have things moving in a community, otherwise everything falls apart, right? And so if you have a situation where the vast majority of all money is going to survival, all of the other parts of society start to break down. And this is why I monitor China so closely, is because they're in what's called deflation. And what deflation is basically everybody selling everything at the lowest possible price, sometimes below production costs, just to stay afloat. And once you reach that point in society, it's called a doom loop, because you can't make enough money to service all of the debt that's been taken out to start the business and create this and create that and blah, 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 blah. Right. So I hope we don't enter that doom loop, but we're already starting to see that in real estate, because people are run out of money. We've lost so much money because of the liberals in the last 10 years that everybody's out of money, right? And I'm sure many people in the chat are seeing this. I can't go and buy the things that I need to buy because my money doesn't go as far as it used to. That's because of
Mhm.
inflation, and that's because of our poor economic policies that are destroying the country.
It's amazing what's happening with real estate in Canada, and how they're putting everything on the line to keep that those real estate prices up.
Yeah, Mark Gregor Robinson, a clown.
I just saw that tweet. I actually have that tweet where he's talking about it. He says, "No, I think we need to deliver more supply instead of making houses cheaper. There's more supply on the market. It's crazy. Go
That's
to
not moving.
Vancouver. It's not moving. The supply is
Yeah.
there, and it's not moving. It's because the prices are too great.
Yeah,
People
well,
cannot afford them."
yeah, well, like, so here's a thought experiment, right? What is the actual value of anything, right? How do you determine what the value of something is, right? And if you have a house, let's say, right? Well, 50 years ago, let's say, right, you could buy a house for like $20,000, okay? And like even in the 90s, like when we were growing up, basically, even at that time, like, so somebody did the math on this, and I wish I put it aside for this, but it was a really good example of, you could basically put down effectively 10% of your yearly income for a down payment on a home, because the homes were a reasonable amount of money. We're talking like $100,000, $200,000, right? So you could save money over a year or a couple of years, or 3 years, 5 years at the most, and have enough money to put down on a home, right? That home was a couple $100,000 that you could raise a family with. Now we're talking about the amount of money that you have to save to just put down a down payment is 5 to 10 years of saving, right? If you're spending and saving and putting towards an asset for long term, and it takes you so much time to do that, we're talking about a massive allocation of your personal resources for something that is not going to give you a benefit for a long time. And this is the important part: if that asset is overvalued to such a degree that eventually it has to correct, which I think is coming really soon, then why would you put your money into that, right? And what's happening in China is that the real estate prices, because they have a population crisis, as we do too. If we didn't have mass immigration, we'd be a declining population as well. They have so much extra supply that there's so many that nobody is buying because like, well, I'm not gonna buy now. I'm gonna wait for the bottom. And so you have these massive amounts of people that bought near the top of the market. And if their equity goes negative and you sell, you owe the bank hundreds of thousands of, in their case, yuan, but in dollars or whatever, right? And this is what we saw during the 2007-2008 crisis: is people had multiple homes, they couldn't service the debt, the interest rates spiked, and they couldn't afford it, so they had to bankruptcy, sell, get out of it, whatever, right? And now we're kind of facing this and many other problems on top of that. And the things that were happening right before the 2007-2008 crisis, which was, I lost my job, interest rates are going up, and I can't afford to work and I can't afford to live, so I quit, and here's the keys, and I'm out, right? And now we're seeing that here in Canada as well.
There was a lot of people that were just stopped paying their mortgage, and they said,
Yeah.
okay, foreclose then.
Yep. Yeah, they throw the keys back. Yeah.
No, they stayed in the house and they said, foreclose on me. I dare you. Because at the end of the day, the banks owned all these properties, and the banks didn't want to go into foreclosure and put it, because if they flooded the market with all these homes, the value would drop even further.
Yeah.
So they're like, whoa, this is because they still have to get the money for the loans, right?
Yeah.
So and yeah, it becomes this spiral, and it's like, whoa, what do you even do?
Yeah. Well, and this, to take it back to precious metals. So one of the things that you can do in times like this is buy precious metals, because what's going to happen at some point? And so if you invested in gold at the start of the century, basically, so we're talking like 20 years ago, you would have a 400%, more than a 400% increase in the value that you bought it at then, right? So 1 ounce of gold was like basically $275. That 1 ounce of gold is $3,500 right now. So we're talking actually more than a 10x. So it's more than 10x, sorry, not 400%, way more than that. So we're talking a 10x increase in the value of that asset class, right?
Crazy.
And right now, yes, exactly. But right now, there's so much stuff happening with silver and the precious metals market. Like, this is, I'm not exaggerating, that this is one of the biggest wealth gain opportunities in my lifetime. And I saw Bitcoin, I saw Google, I saw Tesla before all of those things happened, and I was too young and too stupid and didn't have any money to get on those. And one of the reasons I got into precious metals is because I recognized this is a generational opportunity for people to not only protect what they have, but also to make a significant amount of wealth gain.
Well, and the protect what you have is like a real big part of this. It's a real big part of the whole concept here, because so many people have their money and they have a bunch of savings tied up in, like you said, RSPs or this or that.
Yeah.
And what happens if what happens if the housing market collapses? If the housing market in Canada collapses, it is how much of our economy? It's over 40% of our economy.
It's about 30. But this is an important number. So in the 2007-2008 crisis, where the global financial system basically coughed and hiccuped and almost died before we bailed them out with public money, that was 7% of the American economy was real estate. We're 7%. Near 30. Yeah, we're near 30. And
I heard estimates above 40.
No, it's not that high. It's about 30%. It's about like 28% or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. It's around 30%. Might be above 30% because of the increase in the value of the properties. But a lot of our economy came from mortgage-backed whatever. So this is the main asset for a lot of Canadians. Is I've got RSPs, I've got my property, and that's it.
So average Canadian, 70% of their wealth is tied up in their home.
Exactly. And this is basically the same numbers as China just before their bubble popped. So if our bubble popped and you're sitting in the same situation, not a good situation to be in, right? And so this is why I'm saying that precious metals offers you, if this is a situation that you're in, a way to protect those assets, because, and this is important too, right? So I tell everybody, ask this. So anybody out there that watches this, that you have a financial advisor, go and ask your financial advisor these 2 questions. Number 1 is, I'm concerned about the economy. War is happening. Looks like we're going to have a recession. It's going to be really significant. I don't know how bad it's going to be. People are losing their jobs. I might lose my job. how is my money going to be protected from a recession, just like what happened in 2007, 2008? And how are you going to do that? That's question one. So how is my money protected? How are you going to protect it? What are you going to do about it, basically, right? Because a lot of people are invested in mutual funds. Mutual funds are just a basket of stocks. Typically, that's goes in a lot of that allocation goes into the Magnificent Seven in the stock market, because that's where all the gains have been for the last little while. So those 7 companies have basically outperformed the stock market because they've taken such a huge share of the stock market, right? Secondly, is precious metals a good investment? If they say no, they don't know what they're talking about. Like a financial advisor, and I'm not a financial advisor, right? I just look at the reality of what's happening, and I got into precious metals so I could help people get precious metals, right? So my position is look at history, right? Look at where we're going, and how do I protect myself, right? Those are the 3 questions that are important to you, the individual, and your financial advisor is supposed to field those questions, right? Because that's their job. I'm going to do analysis. I'm going to tell you what's a good move, right?
What if he tells you, no, you should be 100% in government bonds right now?
Crazy, yeah. But they don't even beat inflation. Like, what's the actual? And this is why they hide the actual inflation. Why would I invest in a government bond when actual inflation is higher than the bond? That means I'm losing money, because if the inflation is higher than the bond, that delta, whatever that difference is how much money I'm actually losing. It's stupid.
You might as well just throw it in the bank. Right?
You might as well. Exactly. And so this is why I tell people, just go and ask, right? You are the person that I trusted with my money, right? I trusted you because I don't know this stuff, right? So how am I going to be protected, right? And so I tell people that the rule of thumb for advanced investors is 10 to 20% in gold and silver, specifically to hedge against everything else. It's a hedge against inflation. It's insurance for your wealth. Like, if you have life insurance or health insurance, do you have wealth insurance? Well, there's been a whole bunch of times in history where the stock market has crashed and there's been recessions. So if you had gold and silver in those times, you did really well. If you didn't, you didn't do really well. So this is one of those times. We're talking about World War III. We're talking about nukes flying all over the place. The U.S. is about to destroy Iran. We're eventually going to be at war with China. Like, all this stuff is happening, right? Like, the amount of stuff that's happening on a daily basis, on a weekly basis now, like, blows our like our young lives like out of the water. Like, we used to talk about like the stupid things happening in Parliament, and it was so boring and stupid. Like, we just ignored it because it was irrelevant. But now we're talking about like just the most insane stuff. They're talking about banning internal combustion engines. Like, the absurdity of that policy, it blows my mind how anybody can support these idiots. It's unbelievable.
Right after a winter of EVs just failing all through the prairies. Like,
literally yesterday, Doug Davies, what's his face, the new NDP guy, Don Davies. So he basically said that by 2035 we want to be 100% renewable. Canada is one of the most energy dense places on the planet. And like, to replace our entire energy grid with something that only works half of the day because we don't have any sunshine during the night is such a level of insanity. I can't even comprehend how these people do math, if they do at all. Because what happened in Spain, as you probably saw in the last couple of months, they just got knocked out by some space weather. And we're talking about replacing it? Like, these people are just out of control, man. And so this is what I mean about, like, if these people are the people that are in charge of us, they don't really either understand or care what happens to us, because they're making these insane claims, right?
Well,
so
and the cavalry's not coming. I think this past election just really solidified that for everybody. The cavalry's, they're staying home. The idiots have decided we're going full steam ahead, and we're gonna keep doing this.
Right. So that begs the question, obviously, how do I protect myself? What am I going to do to protect me and my family? If I can't trust the government, I can't trust the banks, I can't trust the people that are screaming at me on the TV about whatever nonsense they care about. What am I going to do, right? This is why I'm a very freedom-oriented person. I want everybody to have the ability to do what they feel is necessary to protect themselves, right? And this is one of the few ways that everybody has to protect your wealth and everything that you've worked for over your entire life from what's coming.
So how do you do it?
So the other way that you can do this, so I just mentioned the other 2 ways. So the kind of the core of our business, right, is the happy medium between these 2 extremes, right? So the drawback when you have gold and silver in your hand is that if you want to get back into fiat currency, you got to pay bills and stuff like that. It's difficult to do that. You have to basically either make a transaction for cash, which Carney is trying to ban over $10,000, but we won't go there today. I just thought I'd mention that because that's something he's trying to do. And if you want to go to an exchange, generally those fees are about 10%, right? So if you want to get back into fiat currency, not only will they charge you a bunch of money for it, but they'll also give you a tax bill, right? So what we do is we have a an international investment account. So effectively what that means is it's a high degree of privacy because it's a Cayman Island structured business that you can put money into. Think of it like a bank account that holds gold and silver. So it's not actually a bank account. You can't like get a card for it or whatever, but it basically puts your wealth into a place that is a private international vaulting service that is universal, guaranteed, backed up by Lloyd's of London, the oldest insurance company on the planet. It's audited twice a year. It's guaranteed to be there. You can sell back to the system at any time. You can, and this is the important part, you can loan against it, and you can do corporate accounts, which is, to my knowledge, the only option that I've seen anywhere that can do that. So because of this, basically you have the option to say, hey, I've got these dollars.
So it's an asset. When you say loan against it, it's an asset that you don't have to cash out, but you can get cash for as a collateral, for use that as collateral to get cash to do whatever with.
Yeah, exactly. So in almost all investments, your investment is locked in and you can't access that capital, right? In this instance, it's not locked in. You can sell it at any time. There's no third-party risk for precious metals, and if you want to, you can pull some of the money out of it without actually making it a sale, right? So it gives you a lot more flexibility. So the way that I say it, I tell people, right, is you've got $100,000, let's say, or $20,000, whatever you have, right? You put it into precious metals, it's probably going to go up very significantly in the coming years for a variety of reasons. We can get into that afterwards. But if it does, you've got an asset sitting there that you can access the capital as you need it. Up to 80%, we generally don't recommend you go past 50%. But let's say you have $50,000 in there and you're like, hey, I need a new car, $25,000 or whatever. Boom, I can pull that money out of there and you can use that cash at will. And it can be sent anywhere in the world. So if you're thinking to move internationally, you can put the money in there in Canadian dollars. You have a bank account in another country, and you can be sent money to that bank account as well, as long as your name is on it. So it gives you a lot of flexibility that a lot of other options don't.
Yeah, well, that's something I'm going to be worrying about pretty soon.
Yeah, I figured.
yeah, get my assets out of this country, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in the chat. I just shared my story recently about why I'm leaving Canada, why I'm moving to the United States.
Hey man, I get it.
There's a lot of people in the community that are doing the same thing, and they're like, wait a second. Now I'm running into issues like how do I take my assets and move them? How do I do that without getting dinged? Because the Canadian government, they want a piece of everything,
man, everything. And I think it's important for everybody to understand too that at a high level, like the people that like the movers and shakers and the big investors and the big money people that set up businesses and invest money, do all this stuff all over the place, because our investment and infrastructure and business environment has just taken such a nosedive over the last 10 years because of all these insane regulations and local policies. They're leaving. Right. So we're talking about billions and billions, potentially trillions of dollars is leaving the country, probably permanently. Right. And so what's going to be left is the insanity that's coming here and whatever you've got. Right. And so this is why I tell people. Right. So if you are worried about the economy, the politics, any of this stuff, right, it behooves you to at least have some precious metals. You don't have to get it from me. Like, I'm not here to be like, hey, you only have to buy from me. There's lots of different options. I'm one of them. And there's always people in the chat.
But physical thing is the real
physical. Physical.
That's the big driver on that one.
Yeah.
Don't get into some paper stock. Don't get into some thing that's a promise to repay kind of BS. Like, have ownership of the actual physical thing. Yeah, physical.
So like you can have it in a vault is fine, as long as it's a trusted source. There's definitely shenanigans out there that I don't trust, especially in international markets. Like Canada's a little bit different because you have to be it's a fairly high level of regulation here. But the important point is that if you don't have any of this stuff, and let's say that the economy does crash and our dollar falls further. Like Canada is actually like the fourth most used currency on the planet. And we have like 3% of global transactions, which is actually really high for what we actually produce. It could be a lot higher.
Yeah, that's great. I'm surprised it's even that high.
Me too. But the point that I'm getting at is that we don't have anything backing our currency, right? Because actual Mark Carney in 2015 was the person that sold the last of our gold to the UK, actually. And
thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. And we used to have a huge amount of gold relative to the size of our economy. We used to have 2,200 tons, but it's been successive governments that have been selling this off, and now we have nothing backing our currency, right? So at some point, the amount of debt that we're taking on because of these policies and because of the deficits that are happening, there's a reckoning coming. Like, this is unavoidable. It's mathematically impossible now for this to go anything else other than something bad is going to happen. Like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's no, like, angels coming in at the 11th hour to be like, oh, don't worry, everybody, everything's going to be fine. Like, that ain't happening. They've been setting this up for years, and at some point something's going to break. And when it does, you'll be really happy that you held gold and silver in your portfolio.
Well, so like, if nothing backs the currency, it's completely fiat paper money. The only thing that backs it is trust. That's why banks are called trusts, right? This is why the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the only thing that backs it is trust. And look at the people running the ship. They're the ones we're supposed to trust.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be, and we have record debt. We have record deficits. It's crazy. At what point do our creditors just say, nah, we're not going to borrow. We're not going to lend you any more money?
Yeah, that's already starting to happen in the U.S. And so what happens in that instance is what's called QE, or quantitative easing. What they'll use a bunch of different names for it, but it's effectively printing money, right? And that's to prop up the currency, right? Because if people are not buying,
that doesn't prop up the currency. It actually devalues it even further.
But it prevents it from collapsing, right? So there's two ways that it can go: hyperinflation or collapse, or default. So collapse is the same as default. Hyperinflation is
a soft default. It's not a direct causal default. You did not pay your debts off. So it'd be like literally, you can't pay your mortgage. You lose your job. You're not making any money. No money's coming in, and you have to make your payments. And you just show up with like printed money. Literally, it's a soft default. It's you saying that you're paying it, but you're not. You're not paying it. You're well. The governments have they're allowed to print money. But that really is they're diluting everybody else's money to pay off the debtors. Pretty soon they'll just say, no, I don't want that money. I'm owed this value. Pay me in US dollars or pay me in something else. What happens then?
Well, ask that again, because I don't think I quite understood what you meant.
So debtors, well, I guess it's in the contract that they have to pay back in Canadian dollars. So
yes,
they're just screwed at that point. They just don't get paid.
If the currency collapses, yes. But so an example of this is the Weimar Republic in Germany, right? So they had, so one of the things that happens, all the rich people basically bought assets. So in an inflationary environment, assets increase in value and debt decreases in value. So if I go and sell something that's inflated in price by like double, but I only paid, let's use random numbers. Let's say I bought something for $10,000, I owe $10,000 on it or whatever, right? And if that inflation increases to the point where now when I sell something, now I'm making $500 on the sale instead of $200 or something like that. So I can use that inflated money for the previous debt, right? That's the purpose of inflation, is to pay off debt at a lower price. Like, that's one of the things that is happening in the background, is that if I take out a loan 20 years ago for $1 million, but it inflates over time, well, now I'm getting money at a much higher rate and a much higher volume, so it's easier to pay off that old debt because it's just a lower absolute amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in this case, if hyperinflation were to come to Canada, or even just runaway inflation, not even right up to hyperinflation, which, I mean, I don't know how you get to one and not end up in the other, but say you have runaway inflation in Canada, but you have a ton of money put aside in gold. That gold relative to the dollar is just going to skyrocket.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because we measure everything in gold. We measure everything in dollars, right? So everything is a ratio, right? So to give people an example, right? Back in Roman times, because Rome is a good barometer of what's coming, is gold and silver ratio was set at 1 to 12. So 12 silver equals 1 gold, right? But now the gold silver ratio is 1 to roughly 100. So 100 silver equals 1 gold, right? So this is the ratio of that time. So if you had some silver or whatever, you could buy X amount of resources. But now if you have X amount of silver, the amount of dollars that you have has increased, that you have to spend to get there, has increased by basically double in the last 10 years or so. Because the average increase for gold has been about 9% per year for the last 25 years on average.
Now those two separated because there's different uses for them, right? So like silver has its own industrial uses, gold has its own industrial uses. They're not really pegged to each other. Kind of like constitutional money. When they originally in 1776 wrote the U.S. Constitution, they actually wrote into it constitutional money. They had like weights and measures that they had to do. This much silver, this much gold is worth $1. That can't work, right?
Not really, because so it kind of goes back to the original question of what is the absolute value of anything, right? How do you determine what the value of something is, right? So like, how much is your time worth? What you're willing to pay for. Like there's that old saying, how much is something worth? It's whatever somebody is willing to pay for it, right?
That's right.
But we use gold and silver as the benchmark for everything because that's what came before. So like this financial system that we're in was always used to be based on gold. So those price setting measures, because we used to be on a gold standard, we compare everything to that. So everything had a baseline of a relationship to gold before we left the gold standard in 1971, right? So because before that, everything was linked to the price of gold. Now that the price of gold changed because after the 1929 what do you call it?
The big market crash. Yeah, the depression happened.
Depression. They did a whole bunch of seizure of precious metals, and then they changed the price of gold, and they increased it by 40%. So the actual value of gold is probably in the neighborhood of mid 5 figures, somewhere around there. So like, for all of the people that are like, this is fear mongering, right? Well, ask some questions. Ask yourself some questions. What is happening to your money, right? What is happening in our society right now? There are people on this planet that are evil. Like, I think we could all agree on that. Well, they have a vested interest, and they have told us they are trying to take our money and control us. I think I don't really appreciate that, and I want to do something that's going to protect me and my family. So, if you think I'm fear mongering, right, based on what I'm saying, well, ask me a question that you want an answer to. If you have a goal of protecting you and your family, how are you going to do this if your money in your pocket is being devalued on a daily basis? What options do you have, right? Do you have another option? The thing that I always like to tell people, right, because there's always the person that says, I can't eat gold and silver, and you are correct, right? The purpose of currency, and maybe I should bring this up because I did a presentation on this that was quite long, but the purpose of precious metals is to get resources that you don't have now. If you can go and buy the resources that you need to survive, well, go and buy them right now. That's the purpose of currency, right? Is to get things that you don't have now, right? But if that currency is being devalued, well, if you're holding on to gold and silver that is increasing in value relative to the currency instead of decreasing in value because of inflation, which one is better, right? Obviously, the best thing is the actual hard asset. So I look at it like this. So there's 5 things that you need, right? Which is skills, assets, resources, protection, and community. Those 5 things, right? Because that's what throughout history has always kept people alive and protected, right? You have to work as a community. You got skills that are necessary to do that. You need resources to create whatever you need to create, and then you create assets out of whatever those things are, right? Then obviously you need the community itself, and you have to be able to protect it. So if you don't want to buy gold and silver, just go and get those 5 things. I have hundreds of kilograms of food. I'm a prepper because I see what's coming, right? So if you don't believe anything that I'm saying about gold and silver, at least go and protect. Like, make sure that you've got 3 to 6 months, even a year of food. Go spend your money on that. So you're protected that way, right? You don't have to buy gold and silver. I'm not saying that you have to, but if you have large amounts of wealth, well, every account in Canada is only insured up to $100,000. So if you have more than $100,000 in there, if the banks go bust, you lose it. And if the banks do go bust, which has happened throughout history, because there's runs on banks, right? If that happens and your money is in there, well, you could lose it, right? So if you have an account that holds gold and you control the gold, well, they can't take that gold. So the whole reasoning behind this sort of stuff is protection and insurance about bad things happening. And right now, because of what's happening in the world, is a generational opportunity to make money, to make wealth, to increase your wealth, right? So basically, any way that you look at this is a safe investment, right? Because there's no third-party risk. Every other type of investment that you can make has some sort of third-party risk, where let's say you buy a duplex, right? So you live in one side and you rent out the other side. Well, your third-party risk is that you have to have somebody in the other side paying that rent. If somebody destroys it, you have to fix that. That's a risk, right? If something breaks, or a hurricane comes, or like a tornado or something, that asset might be destroyed, and you have to pay to fix it, right? So those are risks to your investment. Gold and silver have no third-party risk other than the price of the value of it itself.
Right. I was just thinking to myself, you want to have a little bit of lead to back all of that up.
Yeah,
As
completely.
well.
Yeah, that's why I say protection is the fourth thing in there. Skills, assets, resources, protection is very important, right?
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how much food you've got, somebody else has the lead and they show up and that food's theirs now. So you got to be able to make sure you can hang on to stuff if anything ever happened. The old shit hits the fan scenario. But we're hoping it doesn't get to that. But we hope that society, maintains and remains functionable. But like, yeah, if there's a big, reality is like a crash is imminent. A crash is on its way. Real estate being what it is has to come down in price. There's no way that it can maintain the values that it currently is in Canada. It's just it's unbearable. But so many people are invested so heavily into it,
yeah,
that when it does come down, like there's going to be so many people are going to lose their shirt.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I wanted to mention today is that it's really important to understand that, like in 2007, 2008, like you got to understand that the people that made this system, created this system, manage the system, they know what's coming because they're pushing the system in a certain way, right? And so in 2007, 2008, lots of people knew that was coming and sold just before all of that stuff happened, right? There's a huge amount of people that are in the stock market right now, and the institutional money is selling. All of the top level people, the BlackRocks of the world and those type of people, they are selling stocks right now. Like Warren Buffett, this is a perfect example. Warren Buffett sold basically all of his Apple stock and is sitting in like $350 billion in cash. That alone should tell you that like one of the most prolific investors in all of human history is sitting in cash because he expects a correction to come, right? I'm not the only one saying this.
How is being in cash good for a correction though?
Because it's a different mindset, right? So I'm talking about protection of what you have. He is looking for investment at the bottom after the crash. It's a different mindset.
So he wants to have liquid capital, liquid assets, so that he can
To get back
go
in
and gobble everything up.
Yeah, so look at what's happening in the property market, right? Those people that can't afford another perfect example is Airbnb, right? There was a whole bunch of changes made to the regulations around Airbnb, and a lot of people invested that during the pandemic was like, well, I've got nowhere to go, I might as well get a nice place, I can rent it out, I can make it work, it's very simple, I understand it, easy to manage, it's a great investment, right? And for a while it was, right? But if those interest rates spike and people are not traveling and you can't manage and maintain the cost of that property, you put it up for sale, right? And so there's huge amounts of people that are selling things, right? Because when you run out of money, you start selling things, and this is what causes deflation, because everybody starts selling everything, which increases the downward spiral of the prices that are available, right? And so what you have, and especially after 2008, like BMO dropped like 80%. Well, if you bought at $20, it's now back to 100. You made 4x what your original investment is. And so this is what the super hyper wealthy do. They get up to this super high level, and we're at the all-time highs for the stock market right now. They sell, and the people that are coming in at this level are exit capital. And then when things crash, as they inevitably do, they buy back in.
Holding the bag too, those people.
Yes, this is my point. This is what's going to happen for the people that are not prepared for this. This isn't financial advice. I'm just telling you what history is and what they are planning to do, because I can see it. They talk about this relentlessly. Warren Buffett sold his positions. Like, what does that tell you?
Like in everything, not Coca-Cola.
Not everything, but like he's majority in cash. Like 300, like of the $400 billion of his the hell's the name of his company? Berkshire Hathaway. Like they're sitting in majority cash. The vast majority, like I think their position is like 80% cash last time I checked or something like that. It's crazy.
It's insane.
But this is my point, right? Like there's lots of people that are doing this, right? And it's the people that are institutional and advanced investors. They know where the world's going. And like let's put all of the things that I just said aside for a second, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We know that war with Iran and Israel started. This is something that's new, right? We've already been at war effectively with Russia through a proxy, which is Ukraine, for the last 4 years, basically 4 years, whatever.
3.5 years,
yeah, since 2022, right? So this is a proxy war with a nuclear armed power, right? And Iran is one of the biggest producers of oil for China. This is an existential threat to China too. You don't think that, if Iran gets bombed to hell, this isn't going to affect oil prices? What does your portfolio look like in a time of war not peace, right? This is a totally different mindset, right? And this is what a lot of people are preparing for, because the US looks like it's going to war with Iran this weekend. That might happen. So if they do, and like we're at war with China at some point, I think that's definitely going to happen at some point. What does your portfolio look like then?
Not good. Not
Well, this is
good.
my point. But like, I'm not a strategic. No, what's the word? I am a fundamentals person. Like, I look at what is the harsh reality of what is happening in the world. Right? You have to take like I have the expression of, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality, because eventually reality hits you. Right? Eventually reality happens. Right? And I want to know what is happening and where we're going to prepare for that. And this is why I talk about gold and silver. Like I said, it's not the only option. There's lots of different things that you can invest in to make money out of what's coming. But I'm talking about what's the safest way to do it. What's one of the best ways to do it, right? Gold and silver has been that for eons, eras, generations.
So when you get into this stuff, people have so many questions, and that's like a big part of it. So you decided to put on these seminars, and you're putting one on for our community here, the Clyde Do Something community.
Yeah, so listen, if you think I'm completely wrong and you want to grill me nonstop about it, on Tuesday we're doing a presentation. We talk about a gold and silver for about 45 minutes, tell you how this stuff works, answer a whole bunch of questions. And if you want to grill me about all of this stuff, feel free to join and say, how does this work? What do you think about this? Blah 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 blah. What we do basically is we do 45 minutes presentation, and then do Q&A until everybody gets tired of listening to us or leaves.
Oh, so Q&A can go as long as you want. It'll just as long as people still have
2 hours.
questions.
I've been on there for like 3 hours sometimes, and people are just asking questions, because a lot of people have they're really concerned about their retirement, right? A lot of like I said earlier, there's a lot of people with a lot of RSPs, liras, retirement savings. They're getting close to retirement. You know, like, how do I protect that money that I've been spending 30 years in some cases saving up, right? That this is one of the options, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty, and there should be, because like, if you look at the policies, like I'm perennially online. I grew up online. I grew up on the internet. I follow politics. I follow what's happening in Parliament. I follow all of these geopolitical things that are happening. So I'm a little bit more informed than most people. But at the end of the day, right, there is a trajectory of our society, right? Is it going up and better, or is it going down and worse? Like, if you just think about that in its most basic form, are things getting better or worse, right? That should tell you.
Way worse.
Yeah. Anybody that says things are getting better, I think, is delusional. And if that's you, and hey, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. Like, I want people to understand that we face some very serious problems, and if we don't deal with them, our lives for the foreseeable future and the future of our families is not good, right? We just lived through a pandemic, a war, potentially an economic collapse, and there's a myriad of other problems that I haven't even mentioned today. So like, I've been accused of being a doomer, right? And to some degree I am, but I'm a realist. Like, I want to know what is happening and what we can do to stop it, right? Because I want a political solution to all of these problems. But look at who's in charge of our country. Like, are we going to really have these people fix all of these problems that they created? I don't think so.
I can't believe it. Yeah, we really are in a situation where it's like, pinch yourself. Like, really? Did you think that this was where we were going to be? This time last year, we were looking at the polls and going, oh, okay, the Conservatives are going to take over. It's just a matter of time. And then the Conservatives, they'll do something. Maybe they won't be the best, but they'll do something, at least bring some semblance of responsibility. Nope. That's not coming. And it's not coming for a while. Mom and dad aren't coming home. The cavalry's not coming. What are we doing? It's insane.
Yeah, and this is my point, is that I don't believe somebody is going to come save us. I mean, I like Trump for his domestic policies, but like, you got to understand that the American hegemony, the American empire, is an empire, right? And right now, it's in its decline, right? If the American empire collapses, the whole West collapses with it. What does that leave? Communist insanity, like the most horrific lunatics on the planet. Like, I don't know how many people know this, but China, communist China, the Chinese Communist Party, has been industrially harvesting organs from people for decades. Like, that's happening. Yeah. Most people don't know that, but that's happening, right? I don't want to live under those people. Anyone connected to those people. Mark Carney got a massive $250 million loan personally for his company from them. it's crazy, man. And so where I'm going with this and why this is important is that if you think that there is a shining light at the end of the tunnel that you can get to and protect yourself from all this, you must be really informed to be able to position yourself to do that, right? Because I don't see it, right? If you have something that says, hey, everything will be okay, I'm happy to look at that and be like, hey, yeah, we should really put some effort behind this. But I don't see it, right? And the reason that I don't see it is because of the trajectory. All of the policies, all of the people, all of the things that are happening show a very clear trajectory to violence. That's what's coming. We're in a time of war now, right? And I talk like this because nobody else does. Like I see all of this crazy stuff happening in history, this crazy stuff happening now, and I see the crazy stuff that will probably happen in the future unless we change our trajectory. And I don't want that stuff to happen. So one of the things that I talk about, and for this reason I say, is that you can do something about that to protect yourself. And this is why I talk about the community, right? If you're in a physical community somewhere, which everybody is, who in your community do you actually trust? That you could be like, hey, things are getting crazy right now. We got to do something about it. How many people is on that list? For me, it's a very short list, right? That I could call up and be like, yo, shit's getting wild. We gotta get together and make shit happen, right? That's a very short list for most people, right? And if you can't do that, if you don't have a community, you are vulnerable, right? Who is going to protect you from a roving band of like what's happening in California right now? People like destroying cars and like you just get pulled out of your car and punched out and like your car burned down and something. That's craziness. That's insanity. That's lawlessness, right? And if we don't have the ability to solve these problems as a community, as a society, as a civilization, well, that only leaves you and whoever you have and whatever you have in your physical location, right? So this is why I talk about those 5 things. So if you don't want to go back gold and silver, just not forcing you to. I'm just saying it's one of your options. Go prepare for the inevitability of what's coming, because the inevitability of what's coming is tough times.
Tough times indeed. Yeah, tough times make strong people, and strong people make good times. Isn't that the old adage?
It is, and we're in that
cycle.
turning cycle. Yeah, we're at the end of that cycle, and it's going to start anew. Unfortunately, I really hoped. I really didn't want to be part of that cycle, to be honest. But because we've in the West, we in the West basically didn't take our duties to protect the freedoms that we enjoyed for so long, and we're losing them right now.
Yeah. Yeah, well, especially in Canada, and I've been talking about this a lot, like because people just need to be reminded. Your rights they're not granted to you by the government. By the way, stop pretending that that's the case, and stop agreeing with the government when they pretend that that's the case. Your rights are endowed to you by your creator, however you want to view that, whether you view it in a religious way or not. And the governments are just infringing on your rights when they do infringe on them, and that's really where it's at. I got a couple of questions here from the audience before we get out of here, and any more questions, just pop them in there. Make sure there's a question mark at the end of it. But a couple of super chats here from Mr. Steal Ya Blocks for $5 says this government is crazy. Got $7,000 tax bill in 2024. You can't get ahead in Canada.
I just had a client that called me up, and she had a pretty sizable investment, and she's like, "Hey, I just got a $20,000 tax bill, so I got to sell some of my gold and silver." Okay, she had access to that. There you go.
Brutal. That's absolutely brutal. And by the way, like that, like moving your stuff to the Caymans with gold investments, it's not skirting taxes.
No, this is perfectly legal. It's 100% legal.
It's money that you've already paid taxes on, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like it's absolutely insane. Got another one from Mr. Steal Your Blocks for $5 says, stopped at Timmy's in Grand Prairie recently. Large double was $2.75. What the hell is happening in Canada?
Yeah, and a large double. Go ahead.
You probably didn't even get the large double. You probably got something you didn't order.
Tim
Hortons, right?
Yeah, and like a large double when I was in construction 10, 12 years ago, whatever that was $1.50. So even the price of coffee has nearly doubled in that time.
So the question here from Tim Johnson is, if the debt is at record highs, where did the money go?
Great question. So one of the problems that we're really facing is a structural decline of our institutions. And what that means and where this money goes and how it works is the government prints this money into existence. That's our debt. So it's public debt, right? So they take this money and then they put it places. So they're like, hey, you guys get $10 million and you guys get $10 million and I get a $10 million and yay, millions of dollars goes into the economy, quote unquote. But this is one of the things that causes inflation. But this is also one of the things that causes wealth disparity or wealth inequality, right? Because you've got all of these people at the top that are the closest to the money creation. They benefit the most. And then we have what's called trickle down economics and it trickles down into society and we get screwed because our costs go up where in relation to how much money you actually have, the people at the top don't care. Oh, coffee's $2, $3 now instead of $1.50. I couldn't care. I've got $1 million in my bank account, right? But for us, it's like I'm, going to work and I only make like $15 an hour or whatever the minimum wage is. Like that's a significant difference. Now we're done talking, what is that? 5%, 10%, 10%. We're talking 20% of my hourly wage or something like that. Like the price of milk has been a barometer for the cost of living for a long time for a reason, because everybody experiences it, right? So if everybody's experiencing a cost of living increase, but only a certain amount of people at the bottom really experience that, it's a theft of our living wages.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable that this is what we're actually going through right now. So I want to encourage everybody. When is this? Tuesday the 24th.
Yeah, you can post did you got the link?
The link is in the description right now. Yep. So everybody go into the description. You can check it out. Tuesday, come out. I'll make it if I can, because I got a thing. I'm going to the United States for obvious reasons. And then on the way back, hopefully I can join. So it'll be is it 6 o'clock, 6:30?
Yeah, I think we set it at 6 or I can't actually remember.
It's in the description. Check it out. Yeah. That's Pacific time, by the way. So if you're in one of the other provinces, if you're Eastern, that'd be 9 o'clock if you're in Ontario. So make sure you've got things set up for that. But the link is in the description. Grab it, bookmark it, put it somewhere for a couple of days, because then you can join in. There'll be a bunch of like-minded people asking questions. You get the rundown of what's going on for this. And just if you're interested, the whole idea of the seminar is great, because you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to buy something. Just go for the seminar if you just want to hear more about it. That's really all that is, and you're just a click away from going back to your daily routine. You don't even have to make a phone call. So join in for that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and like I love answering questions. So if you want to, like I said, if you want to grill me about stuff and you think I'm the worst person ever, and you think you got some stuff that you want to say, then happy to field questions, right? Because I've been living and breathing this stuff for more than a decade at this point, so I know my stuff pretty good, and I can give lots of examples. And and this is fairly tame, honestly, for the stuff that's actually happening out there. And even this, right? There's so much that's happening. Like you really just can't put it into words. They're the crazy stuff that's happening. Like they're talking about doing a second Bretton Woods. They're talking about central bank digital currencies. They're talking about repricing the price of gold. Like I could go on and on and on about all the stuff that's happening, and most people have no idea, right? They're talking about digital currencies in Canada, right? That's a central bank digital currency. Like all this stuff, crazy stuff is happening. At the end of the day, you have to decide what's important to you in your life and you and your family, right? This is one of the options that you have. If it's not the option for you, that's totally cool, but it is one of the options that you do have.
Absolutely. And this is why I've had you guys as a sponsor for the channel for so long, because I believe in it. It's like I said, I don't have Raid Shadow Legends every video. I don't have a ton of sponsors. I have you guys, and I have the coffee that we make. This is my own coffee that we sell on the store. So thanks everybody for tuning in for this. This is a special live stream, and I'll be back tomorrow for my usual videos in the morning, and also for the usual Friday night live stream where it's giving back to the community. We're going to have a good chat tomorrow, just me and you guys. So tune in for that. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. Thanks, Bryce Wade. Really appreciate it. You're a real champ for coming out and doing this for us.
Thanks. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter. You can direct message me as far as I know. I'm on Facebook, and I do a weekly stint on What's Up Canada as a podcast guest on a weekly basis. So if anybody wants to chat with me, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. That was a great